The median net worth of black families in Boston is just $8. The median net worth of white families in Boston is nearly $250,000, nearly 31,000 times as much.
I had to rewind this Democracy Now! Clip from March 25th in the year 2021 to make sure I heard this correctly. When we talk about demanding reparations for Black Americans, this is what we're talking about. It's not just the more than 2 centuries of chattel slavery most of us are aware of. As if it could get any worse than that, here are some other historical events and policies that have impeded Black American wealth generation, according to the Brookings Institute. Congressional mismanagement of the Freedmen's Savings Bank, which left 61,144 depositors with losses of nearly $3 million in 1874. The violent massacre decimating Tulsa's Greenwood District in 1921, a population of 10,000 that thrived as the epicenter of African American business and culture, commonly referred to as Black Wall Street. Side note, if you're like me, you shockingly just learned about this unimaginable tragedy in the past couple of years from the season opener of the series The Watchmen. And discriminatory policies throughout the 20th century, including the Jim Crow era's black codes, strictly limiting opportunity in many southern states, the GI Bill, the New Deal's Fair Labor Standards Act's exemption of domestic agricultural and service occupations, and redlining. Let's put a pin on that one, by the way. Wealth was taken from these communities before it had the opportunity to grow. So back to our pin about redlining. Redlining is the systematic denial of various services or goods by federal government agencies, local governments, or the private sector, either directly or through the selective raising of prices. And you may have heard it most commonly used in connection with property ownership and home loans. Well, prior to the Fair Housing Act of 1968, there were no specific laws that protected minority populations from discriminatory practices in housing and commercial markets. Therefore, businesses were able to exploit these already marginalized groups and increase their profits. So, we're just lightly touching the tip of the iceberg that is institutionalized racism in the United States. We could go on and on and on and on. And we will in the future. But let's get back to reparations specifically. Whenever activists advocate for something that could benefit the working class and marginalized people in this country, our leaders and pundits and media lapdogs fall all over themselves to be the first to whine.
How in the heck are we going to pay for this?
When it comes to tax cuts for the wealthy, or bailouts for banks, or corporate welfare in the form of tax subsidies, or an endless stream of taxpayer dollars for the defense budget to support ongoing wars for profit, our leaders don't even give it a second thought. So, the rest of this video will be an open letter to Congress from Bite-Sized Democracy to offer some advice for how we can pay for it. There are so many ways, but here are 4. You know, just off the top of our heads. Dear Congress, this letter is to encourage you to include reparations for Black families in your agenda for the next 2 years. You know it's the right thing to do. You just need a little help imagining actually helping the people you guilt and cajole into voting you into your high-salaried positions at the nation's capital every 2 years. Use the nearly $4 billion we taxpayers spend every year in foreign aid to Israel, which in part supplies and maintains Israel military weapons to uphold colonial settlements. Some would even call it apartheid in Palestine, where we've been witnessing a blatant David and Goliath situation for decades now. We spend twice as much every year on blinging out the police and military tactical gear than we do on a social safety net for our most vulnerable. And it's clear from the summer of 2020 that this is causing more unrest, harm, and death in our communities. From there, let's use the $62 billion in implicit subsidies we taxpayers spend on cleaning up after big oil companies by making these companies pay for their own poisonous practices themselves.
Really?
Really?
Tax the wealthy 1% just a measly 1% a year. As of October 19th, 2020, the top 1% of Americans had a combined net worth of $34.2 trillion. Just 1% of $34 trillion is $340 billion we could use for reparations. A little side note here for anyone watching this who loves to defend billionaires like a little weirdo. The wealthy didn't get that way by pulling themselves up by the bootstraps. The obscenely rich did it through things like inherited wealth and by exploiting labor and tax law loopholes. The sharply increasing wealth gap is your evidence for this, ya weirdo. This is, of course, just a fraction of the many areas we could gather money to pay for reparations. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I think these limited suggestions add up to roughly $505 billion. But as the richest country in the world, I think we can do better than that. So hey, Congress, might we suggest the following as well? Ending corporate subsidies, corporate welfare, a marginal tax on Wall Street transactions, taxing megachurches that rake in billions of dollars between them, because apparently they can't keep their slimy hands off politics like they're supposed to.
Jesus.
The bottom line is, stop with the how do we pay for it nonsense and just pay for it with anything that doesn't hurt the poor and working class. Thank you for listening. Love, Bite-Sized Democracy. Thank you for watching this video from Bite-Sized Democracy. Please hit like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more content coming soon. Did we get something wrong? Do you have some helpful additions? Please comment below and let us know. And see you next time on Bite-Sized Democracy.